The 1850 to 1870 censuses were the first to list every person in a household, but they left out one crucial piece of information: how the people were related to each other. And that missing detail can lead to big consequences. In one example I'll show you, there were 3 Nancys in a household of 5, and the ages made no sense at all. In this video, I'll walk you through some real censuses to show you how I discovered the relationships that the census didn't tell us. Let's start by taking a look at this example of my 3 times great-grandfather, John Stewart, who's highlighted in yellow. Here he's listed with Jane, age 35, Alex, 18, Francis, 13, Laura, 12, William, 8, Sarah, 5, and Cordelia, 2. This appears to be a husband and wife and their children, but if we really pay attention to the ages here, we see that Jane would have been about 17 when she had Alex, which is not a big problem, but we also see that there's then a 5-year age gap between Alex and Francis, and then we have a 4-year age gap and a 3-year and a 3-year. It's important not to take just one record and base your conclusions on it, especially when it's not even telling you the relationships. So let's dig a little deeper. This household was living in Clinton County, Pennsylvania. If we go back 10 years, we come to 1860, and again, we have them highlighted. Here we have John Stewart, 33, Jane, 24. It looks almost like Abner, but that's Alexander, 8, Francis, 3, and Laura, 2. This is the same household. And again, we see that Jane would have been pretty young to have Alexander, and then there's a pretty good age gap before Francis. Let's go back 10 years previously. Now we're in the 1850 census, still in Clinton County, Pennsylvania. And again, I have highlighted in yellow John Stewart. This time he has a wife, Sarah, that is a lot closer to him in age. We have what appears to be their son, George W., 1 month old. And then we have a Mary Jones, who is listed as Black and is probably working in the household. You can see that John Stewart is a hotel keeper. And actually right above John, we have his parents, Robert Stewart and Francis. We have John Stewart here. This appears to be a different wife, probably a first wife with that 1 month old child and them being so young. And so now this gives us better insight into that other situation where in the 1860 and 1870 census, Jane is probably a second wife. Now, if we just go to my tree, we'll see one other piece of information. We have this marriage date of the 27th of September, 1849. I need to go back through my files and see where I got this marriage date, but you can see on my tree that I have here Sarah Jane Watson, who is my 3 times great-grandmother, with the 2 children, George, who was that 1 month old in the 1850 census, and then Alexander, who we saw in the 1860 and 1870 census, and then the second wife, Jane Mary Betts, and her children. When we see a record like this, we should look at those age gaps between a husband and his wife, or between a wife and the first child or the oldest child, to see if it makes sense that this is one household. Often looking at the ages between these children, because often those age gaps show where one spouse died and then a person remarried. So that's case number 1. Let's take a look at a second case. This is in Perry County, Tennessee in 1860. And we have the head of household, W.K. Dixon, who's 48. Then we have Sarah A., who's 25, James B., 20, William P., 18, Margaret, 15, Jacob, 14, and Nancy, 11. W.K. Dixon is my 3 times great-grandfather. It could be that he is here with a bunch of his children, so his wife has probably died. But let's look at those age gaps again. We have between 48 to 25, 20. There's not a big age gap in any of the children, but let's look at where they were born. So WK and all the other people are born in Tennessee, but Sarah A. is born in England. That is very unusual. This was a rural county, and it's unlikely that W.K. Dixon went to England and had a child there and then came back. We don't want to look at records in isolation, so let's take a look at another census record. Now this is 1850 for the same W.K. or William K. Dixon, spelled differently, but it doesn't matter. And we see the birthplaces of everybody. This is in Tennessee, although you can't see, they're just ditto marks. Again, he has a wife, Sarah, but William is 38 and Sarah is 38. And then we have Jane, who's maybe 15, Mary 12, James 6, and then children going on down. Oh, James is 10, William 8, 5, 7, 1, or 3, 1. These numbers are kind of hard to read. But we have Sarah, but this time Sarah is born in Tennessee, not in England, and she's the same age as William, 38, where before we had Sarah was 25. These don't appear to be the same person. And if we come over to my family tree here we have William Kennedy Dixon, my 3 times great-grandfather, and we can see that he had this first wife, Sarah McCage, who is my 3 times great-grandmother. And she had these children, James B. Dixon being my second great-grandfather, but then WK married a second time to another Sarah. This one quite a bit younger than him, more like the ages of his children, and she was born in England. I will do a video on this later, and if so, I will link it, because this is a fascinating case where after the death of WK, there are lawsuits and there's a lot of bickering. I'm guessing the children weren't really happy that their dad had married somebody so young. But for now, we can use, again, the clues that we see here, just even that birthplace, the age of the 2 Sarahs, to see that they are not the same person. And as we continue to do more research, we can see that they are in fact 2 different people. Now let's do one more before we get to the 3 Nancys. This is in Searcy County, Arkansas, and this is my husband's family. This is his 3 times great-grandfather, Jesse Griffin, age 60. Then we have Sarah, 55, Lucinda Williamson, 24, John Wesley, 12, and Martha, 9 months. And Jesse is a Methodist minister. If we look at the birthplaces, he was born South Carolina, Sarah, North Carolina, Lucinda, Tennessee, and John Wesley and Martha, Arkansas, which is, again, where this census takes place. Now, we never look at these censuses in isolation. So let's go back 10 years to 1850. This is also in Searcy County, Arkansas. For some reason, it's not letting me highlight them, but we can see Jesse Griffin right here. We have Jesse, age 48, born South Carolina, Sarah, 43, North Carolina. That makes sense. Then we have Jesse L, 16, Wade, 10, Lucinda, 13, John W, 1, and then Robert Watterson, who I've actually not figured out who he is. He's probably like a farmhand. But we do have Jesse and Sarah, and what appears to be their children. It's a little unusual in that it goes Wade and then Lucinda and then John W. But let's look and compare these 2 censuses. So we have determined basically that Jesse and Sarah are husband and wife, and I have other records showing that. Here we had a Lucinda 24, a Lucinda Williamson, and here we had Lucinda 13. So it appears between 1850 and 1860, Lucinda, who's here 13, has married and become Lucinda Williamson, and likely her husband is deceased at this time. Again, to bring in more records, we can find her death certificate. Here's her death certificate. It's Mary L., but this is Mary Lucinda Hollabaugh, and she is born about the right time, 1836, which would have made her 14 and 24, basically. And she has listed as her parents Jesse Griffin and Sarah Brooks. It says both of North Carolina, where the other record said North Carolina and South Carolina. And we can see the informant is W.W. Griffin, who is likely her brother. Now let's look at the other people. We have here John Wesley. It kind of appears Wesley is a last name. He's age 12. But if we look at that 1850 census, we see it is actually John W., John Wesley Griffin. And that is my husband's great-great-grandfather. And he is a son of Jesse Griffin and Sarah, even though there's that large age gap between Lucinda and John Wesley. So here we have John Wesley Griffin's death certificate. Okay, this record's kind of hard to read, but it shows that he was born in 1848 and died in 1931. And it lists his father as Jesse Griffin, born in Tennessee, and mother not known. Now we have one person left in this census. We have Martha, who's 9 months old. My best guess, looking at ages, birthplaces, they're living here in Arkansas, is that Martha is Lucinda's daughter. So let's take a look and find Martha in the 1870 census. So we're still in Wiley's Cove in Searcy County, Arkansas. Remember, Lucinda's last name was Williamson. Here we have Martha A. Williamson, age 10. She's with a couple other Williamsons, Rhoda, age 15, and Mary, age 12. And above them, we have these 3 Hollabaugh children, who are likely Lucinda's children from another marriage. We have Judah, William, and it looks like Nay or Way, a male who's age 1. But this is image 17 of 17. Let's go back to image 16 and look at the bottom of that page. We don't see Halabah, we see something very different. It took me a moment to figure it out. If we look at the household number, this is household 103. If we go back to the page we were on and scroll up, this is household 113. So what has happened? Well, we also can look at the page number here. It's page 17. If we go back a page, we are on page 15. These are out of order. We actually need to find page 16. And I had looked on Family Search, it was correct there, but we can find it on this also. Here's page 16. If we go to the bottom, this is Wiley's Cove, and we have this Halabah family. And here again, we have Mary L., which is what she showed up as in her death certificate. And so we see these, and this is likely, as I said, her second marriage. A lot of these kids appear to be his children, with Mary only being 23. Now, this writing is not very good. Mary L. was 24 last time. She should be 34, 33. I think this is actually possibly a 33. It is not written well, but other records do show that Mary Lucinda Griffin was married twice, first to Williamson, where she had children, including Martha, and then to Halabah, this John Halabah, where she had other children. And so when we look again back at this original census record, now we know we have Jesse and Sarah that are husband and wife, their daughter Lucinda and her daughter Martha, and then John Wesley is their younger child who was born later in life. And now let's look at this fascinating household that has 3 Nancys. Here we have Nancy A. Beige, B-A-I-G-E, 49, born in North Carolina. William Points, 22, born in Kentucky. Nancy Points, 12, born in Kentucky. John Baise, B-A-I-S-E, who is 1, born in Missouri, and Nancy Points, 1, born in Missouri. So we have 2 surnames. We have Points, we've got William, Nancy, and Nancy. And then we have Beige, spelled 2 different ways, and we've got a Nancy A. and a John. These ages are really confusing. We've got somebody who's 49, and then 22, 12, and 2 one-year-olds, but with different surnames. So William Points is who I'm focused on, and I'm working on a fascinating case. But this William was born in Kentucky, and he would have been about 22 at this time in 1860. And some of the other Points family were living in Berry County. I found this William Points, but then I look at this family and I was pretty baffled as to how these people could be related. So let's try to figure that out. Now, this is the family I'm researching. We have Francis Points and Susanna Beach, his wife. And the person I'm interested in is this William Points right here, who's their son. I've put these together looking mainly at census records, and this is my starting point. So I found that William here in 1860. So first, let's look at this other Points, the first Nancy that's right below him, Nancy Points, age 12, and go back to this tree I've already been putting together. So William has a sister, Nancy, who would have been 12 years old in 1860. So this appears to be his sister. And let's look at the 1850 census. And if we look at the 1850 census, we can see Francis and Susanna and 5 of what appear to be their children. Again, there's no relationship given, but we can see William there, who's 12 years old, and we can see Nancy, who's 2. And so I believe that's identified the first 2 people in this household, which are the second and third person, William and Nancy Points, who are siblings from Kentucky. This also helps me to verify that this is, in fact, the William Points who I found in the 1850 census in Grant County, Kentucky. So an interesting story about figuring out who Nancy A. Baise was. Last week, I was at the NGS conference in Louisville, Kentucky. I was on the bus to do some research, and I was sitting next to Nicole Dyer of Family Locket. And I was showing her this household, and we got to talking, and she was the one that suggested that maybe Nancy A. Baise was William Point's mother-in-law and that his wife had died. So that seemed to make a lot of sense. And I got to the Kentucky State Archives and I pulled the Points surname file. And when I opened it, the very first page was just a compilation, but somebody wrote that William Points was married 4 times and his first wife was Rachel Bays. And it said they supposedly married in Berry County, Missouri, but there was no record of their marriage. So that was the very first thing I saw. And I was like, yes, this makes sense. But again, that's not proof. And so I went online to look for proof of this marriage. And here's what I found: a record image for Berry County, Missouri. And this is the year 1858. It's the marriage record of William Points, which looks more like pints, and Rachel Bays, B-A-Z-E, I believe, all of Berry County, Missouri. It's in 1858, which would make sense. She must have died pretty soon, maybe in childbirth, and had this daughter, Nancy. So with a little more work, I found Rachel Bays, who was 12 years old and living in Berry County, Missouri in 1850. And her mother is Nancy, age 39, born in North Carolina. So if we go back to that 1860 census, we have Nancy A. Bays, 49, who was born in North Carolina. So now we know who Nancy A. Bays is. That's William Points' mother-in-law. His wife is deceased, and Nancy Points must be their child, probably named after Rachel's mother, Nancy. And although I haven't found the actual record, here we have a mortality schedule index for 1860 showing Rachel S. Points, age 22, born 1838 in Tennessee, dying about June 1860 in Flat Creek, which is in Berry County, Missouri. And I don't find any other records for Nancy Points, age 1, so she might have died young, but I will keep doing more research. Well, I didn't positively figure out who John Bays is. He's likely a grandson of Nancy. I did figure out that this is, in fact, the William I was researching, that we've got his sister Nancy, his mother-in-law Nancy, and his daughter Nancy. And so that's the mystery of these three Nancys with two different surnames and some unusual ages in one household. The case of the three Nancys and these other census records show how much detective work is needed when doing genealogy. If you enjoy a good mystery, you might want to watch a video where I use my DNA detective methods to identify an unknown great-grandfather who was born with a different name and had also used a previous alias. It's a fascinating case. Or you might be interested in this video where I used AI to take a deep dive into census records and collect a whole bunch of data and then create tables and graphs like this age distribution table. Until next time.